So it went everywhere in my life, including the book I wrote, Just Ask, Leadership. And that came from wanting it. People thought that I did it because I was entering the coaching world, but at the time I started it, the only reason I wanted to do it was discovery and understand why it is I believe great leaders asked the right questions and ask questions. And so I set out to interview about approximately 100. I probably did 120 leaders, everything from like Mike Harper, who grew Conagra from 500 million to 20 billion, Jack Chain, who ran all of the Air Force, both the planes and the nuclear arsenals. It was phenomenal. Or Jay Peterman, Jay Peterman from Seinfeld, the catalog guy. There's a real Jay Peterman, and I interviewed him. But it was a great experience. And what I found was most of these leaders had no idea about asking questions. It was a moment of reflection in their work, just like it was for Rick and I running our business, which was it just didn't work anymore to gather information. It was a shift.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Creating Powerful Impact, where we explore strategies that empower business owners to scale their business with ease, not hustle. And today we are exploring and asking the questions of how do you really unlock leadership potential? How do you drive team success and create powerful business growth? Because our guest today is Gary Cohen. He's an executive coach, leadership expert, and author of Just Ask Leadership: Why Great Managers Always Ask the Right Questions. And him as a managing partner of CO2 Partners, he has helped leaders from brands like Unilever, Intel, just to name a few, and has just gotten crazy, remarkable results by embracing inquiry-based leadership. Please help me welcome Gary to the Creating Powerful Impact stage. How are you?
Good, Shay. How are you? I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
I'm excited to have you here too, because I mean, in your journey, your entrepreneurial journey, you've scaled businesses to like 2,200 employees, going public on NASDAQ, and changing things up. I'm interested in going, okay, in today's world, does somebody really want to have a 2,000 plus employee business? And if so, what does that look like? And then also taking a look at like that whole inquiry-based leadership and how you came about that. So where do you want to start? Where do you want to take us?
Well, I think it'd be helpful for your audience to know that to get to 2,000 employees is just a step at a time, right? It's not our first year we hired maybe 25 people, right? And there's stages along those that you go through. We found I do executive coaching today, but it's not new to me. We hired a coach our second year in business. He made more than we did probably for 3 years. He was formerly president of Dun & Bradstreet, and it was invaluable to us. And I'm sure that's where I got the notion, this is really fun. Wouldn't it be fun to be him in the role? And that was one of our secrets to success, which was having somebody partner with us. And we knew nothing. I mean, we absolutely knew nothing. We didn't know. We were in the call center business. We knew nothing about the call center business. We didn't know anything about business. And so it was one step at a time. And that kind of led to the inquiry part. So at first, we found that all the inquiry was around our knowledge. We were asking questions for us to know. And at a certain point, it didn't work anymore. Because, being the fountain of all knowledge at your organization makes you the bottleneck of that organization. And so we started asking questions to get other people engaged and other people. And I can't say that it was like, aha, this is what we're doing. but it naturally occurred over the course of growing the business, that we had to use questions to engage other people to get them activated rather than for our own knowledge.
So is this just on your team and leadership within the team, or did it also then convert into like the clients that you work with?
Oh, I'm sure that we did it with the clients. I can't say my memory is that with great fidelity around that topic. But questions, once you start doing it, it becomes a natural event. If you ask my kids who are now adults, you know, they'll say something like, "Dad, I want your opinion, not your question." So, so it went everywhere in my life, including the book I wrote, Just Ask, Leadership. And that came from wanting it. People thought that I did it because I was entering the coaching world, but at the time I started it, the only reason I wanted to do it was discovery and understand why it is I believe great leaders asked the right questions and ask questions. And so I set out to interview about approximately 100. I probably did 120 leaders, everything from like Mike Harper, who grew Conagra from 500 million to 20 billion, Jack Chain, who ran all of the Air Force, both the planes and the nuclear arsenals. It was phenomenal. Or Jay Peterman, Jay Peterman from Seinfeld, the catalog guy. There's a real Jay Peterman, and I interviewed him. But it was a great experience. And what I found was most of these leaders had no idea about asking questions. It was a moment of reflection in their work, just like it was for Rick and I running our business, which was it just didn't work anymore to gather information. It was a shift. And there were only 2 of the interviews in which the interviewees, CEOs, who happened to be father and son, the father ran Toro and the son ran Select Comfort, the Sleep Number company. And they were the only 2 who purposely and intentionally started with the questions. They understood that there was a aha there. And so the thought with the book was, could we help people engage faster? Because all these people said they wish they had learned that skill earlier in their career, as opposed to stumbling it by accident.
So give us an example. You're working with somebody and they're coming to you and they're like, okay, I'm interested in this inquiry-based leadership. What do I do? How do I start? What questions am I asking? What's the purpose and intention of it? Give us some examples.
Well, we start all of our clients off with an assessment that we created post-book, and the assessment gives you a style, and there's 4 styles. So that you have the innovator, the director, the judge, and the professor. And that's on a quadrant system. I had hired the people who built Wilson Learning's assessment of styles, like you've heard of driver, that came from that. And they also worked on the Covey 360. And so they helped put this together. And we found that there were 4 styles of questioners. And they had to do with, if you did a 2x2, it would be perspective gathering, okay, or evaluation, knowledge, or action. And so the model's called PEAK, which is handy because our whole motif and ethos is around mountains.
Right.
Always
Well,
getting
and
to your
you're at
next peak.
the chalet right now.
Exactly. And so from that, we have a 360 format or an individual. I recommend the 360, and it's free to all your guests. They can just go to co2coaching.com, hit resources, and find it there. It's called Peak Assessment. And from that, they see how much are they of command and control versus a peak, higher peak score of asking. Okay, so that's the first place we start. Then it's what style are you? And what we learned through this assessment, which was totally fascinating, unexpected, was that people fall strongly into one of these quadrants, which means it's the negative that's actually interesting to me, which is it means that we're missing out on 75% of the questions.
So it's also kind of like Lego love language. Are you asking the questions in the language that your team understands as well?
No, I don't think we've discovered why they're in each style. We've just learned that there is a style, which means they're biased towards a certain type of questions. In fact, I find it so fun when I read a lot of business books and I highlight the questions. And you'll find that these authors are often asking 1/4 of the questions they could ask. And yet, like at the beginning of the book, they always say, oh, the question is about everything, and yet they stay to quadrant. So where does this help you as a leader? Where it helps you is that often leaders, by accident, might have a team that has all these styles in it, and so all the questions get asked. What I find, though, is sometimes a style is missing from the team. And so the questions are never asked. And when the team gets stuck, if they had written down what are the questions they're asking in these quadrants, they'd find, there's a whole set of questions not being asked. And when you start asking those, there's a breakthrough.
Interesting. Okay, so obviously I'm in the world of events. We run and produce events for all kinds of professionals and experts. And so when we're crafting an event and to run a show, I could see it being useful to ask all four quadrants of questions based on, because you don't necessarily know who's in the audience and what quadrant they're listening to question wise, and allow them to then have a breakthrough, which would be
Yes.
supportive to them.
Totally. And then we stumbled on something else. I'd like to say we were geniuses. We weren't. We just stumbled on it. One of the coaches at our firm said, I find if you ask it in a Z format, okay, and this will make sense to your audience once they take the assessment, right? And the Z format would start with professor questions like, has anybody else ever done this before? And then go to the innovator. What could we do like that? Right? To then the judge, if we did this, what might not work about it? Right? To the director, what are the 3 things we could do in priority rank order to get this going? Right? And so if we follow the Z, you find that people naturally like and feel comfortable with that form of questioning.
I think that's also fascinating because if you were to look at your sales conversations, you could ask the questions in a way that would pique the person's interest in being able to help them figure out, what is the pain and figuring out how they enjoy the questions being asked to them personally, and then
Mm-hmm.
being able to ask in that manner to support them in moving forward for their next best step. And
That's
the
great. I
questions
had
that
not thought of it in that way. I know that when we were selling large contracts in my old life, we'd use the spin selling method, situation, problem, uh, implication, and needs payoff, which was developed by Neil Rockheim. And it was a questioning model. Right. And the idea was that leaders hate situation questions because why didn't you look it up on the website? Like, how many employees do you have? How big is the company? Those things. Problem, they're okay with the problem questions, like what's your biggest problem, things like that, but they would have preferred you got that in advance. Okay. But the implication of that problem, like the fact that your payroll, we could save you 3% on your payroll. What is the implication to that for you? And then they tell you, and then you say, so what would it be worth to be able to accomplish this? And they go, well, we'd pay $1 million. Well, so if I was able to give you a solution for 100,000, Oh my goodness, that right. And that's that whole model. It's a brilliant model. And I'm sure, again, why do questions resonate with me? And goes way back.
Well, if I were to look at my life, I think I've been always running and producing events, right? So it makes sense why you've always been asking questions.
It's kind
So
of fun being on the other end of this,
yeah, right.
with you being the questioner.
Hopefully I'm doing it correctly in on all four quadrants. We'll find out at the end, I guess. Um, so I'm curious to know if somebody is you have a business owner, an executive, and they're wanting to uncover these hidden opportunities. What is it, either a process, or what do you take them through, or what are you uncovering? And then what are some of the things that they're doing that's helping them grow and scale and get an ROI by implementing these question formats?
Yeah, well, we're an interesting firm. We're not like most coaching firms. We are business people first, coaches second.
Okay.
And most coaching firms are coaches first, maybe business skills second, right? And the reason that we look at that is we always look at our costs in the ROI. I consider us very expensive in the coaching world. And the reason is because we aim for the value. And then our clients wind up staying for years and years. I've got clients who've been with us 8, 9, 10 years. And so that's our proof that it's working, because you wouldn't spend that much money if it wasn't creating value. I think that the magic is we meet the entrepreneur where they are. So entrepreneurs are the entire range, right? From we don't often do startups because they usually don't want to pay the fees, and which I think is a mistake. Having been a startup and we paid the fee, as I said, more than we earned, and the value was there because you just skip so many lessons that you would get the hard way. And so from our standpoint, we meet the entrepreneur where they are, and these might be serial entrepreneurs where this is their third business, or it could be first-time entrepreneurs, and it doesn't matter, or it could be the next generation, which we have a lot of fun with, helping the next generation of entrepreneur whose parents or grandparents had started the business and they're taking it over, and what do they need to learn, because it's a different thing than their parents had to learn
Yeah,
because
that
of the
makes
scale.
sense. With give us an example of someone that you've worked with recently, being that you think about the business first and then move into the coaching. Like, give us an example of what somebody's been able to do with you.
Here's one that's less recent, but it was so, those early days stories are often more poignant. So this entrepreneur, after meeting me, said, "Gary, oh my goodness, could I use you? I just don't have the time." Right? That was the answer. And so I said, "Okay, here's the deal. I'll give you back 3 times the time you give me. And if I don't, we're done. We'll just finish up. So give me 3 months to do that." So gave me 3 months. And within that 3 months, I asked for 3 hours a month, and I gave back over 45 hours a month.
Okay, tell us more. Like, what?
You start looking at what they're doing. I mean, everything from signing checks. I mean, there'd be stacks of checks on her desk for her to personally sign. And she felt like the only thing that she could do was to sign them to know where. And so then we talked about banks and how the bank has different processes and systems to make sure and validate the money's going to the right places, things like that. Or how many of the things she wasn't delegating to people because of trust issues that she had for them, right? And then it moves to questions, right? So the questions were, how do we use questions to create accountability for those people to do the job that they're assigned to do?
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, time frees up. And then we could get on to other work. And so talk about returns. This in this business, they were doing catalogs. And this was 20 years ago, right? So
Yeah.
and so we started talking about how much they were billing for packaging and handling. So shipping and handling, right? And I said, so how much do you pay for Amazon? And this is pre-Prime,
Okay.
right? And well, we pay, whatever it was, $10, right? And I said, and how much does it cost you? Well, I don't know. Why don't we look into that? So she looks into it and it's like $30 for them to actually do shipping. And I'm like, how expensive are these products? Well, some of them are thousands of dollars. I'm like, so do you think if we doubled your cost to like from 30 to, so this conversation led to hundreds of thousands of dollars within months as a return, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then I wound up working with them for like 8 years,
Oh, wow.
because within months we paid for all of the work in the future. And that's what we find as a company, which is we're trying to land something of significance within about 3 months.
Mhm.
Because we find that with entrepreneurs, if you can show the tangible value right away, you've built your credibility to do the hard work,
Mhm.
the lifting of how do I move things that I'm subject to object. So it's things that have me versus I have it.
Yeah.
And like, it's a complicated subject and it changes the way people think.
Yeah. I'm curious to know your take on AI.
I love it. Okay, so I grew up as a kid with very severe learning challenges, ADHD, but I didn't know I had it, and also short-term memory and active work. I'm sorry, short-term memory and graphomotor skills. So if I was writing notes, I'd stop listening because it would draw down on my active working memory.
Mm.
And so when AI came out, I looked at it as such a blessing. I had a partner where my thoughts could actually get produced way faster. And so I took to it just immediately, and I've gotten most of my clients, not all of them, most of them in it. I record every call. I have pre-written models to have it deliver notes on how I want my notes written from the calls. I'm producing so much content. And, there's a bizarre thing that's going on. One is don't produce content because people could get it themselves, right? That's one argument. The other argument is if you don't know the content that you're producing, it's probably not very good because you can't know whether it's true or false, right? So the things I'm producing are things I know, but because it writes so efficiently, right? I can read it, edit it, change it, reprompt it, and it's freaking phenomenal. And the time savings, I mean,
Mhm.
there's things that I do, my clients do that they could never do. And we do it in partnership. Like there's some people think like, no, you got to hide that. And I'm like, no, so we'll do screen sharing. And there's a notion that we do at CO2, which is performance rubrics. Okay, so let's do a performance rubric for you. Hosting a show. Okay, so you type in the prompt, create a performance rubric for someone hosting a podcast show on this topic. Okay, it will, and use 4 levels of evaluation. So across the top, you'd have poor to extremely good. Okay, and vertically, you'd have like 5 to 8 different things it's judging you on. But then it gives you very specific attributes, like behavioral attributes to look at, right? And you go, wow, I know when I used to do this with clients, it would literally take days to do one.
Yeah.
Now it's done in like a minute, and then you can change it, right? And we do it real time. And they see the magic, and then now they've learned how to do it, and they go off and do it. So they can do this on every employee's profile rubric.
Yeah, I love it. There's so many things that you can do that you really just have to open up your brain to go, how can I, right? How can I have AI support me in this task, right? Which again, going back to the questions of how, what is it going to do to support me, to save me the time so I can go and do the things that I'm supposed to do as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as a CEO, right? Oh, I love it too.
So with that, I've created, using the peak model of questioning, I can put in the problem and it'll come up with 48 different questions based upon which style.
Oh, really?
And we cross-reference that with a different model we have called Ascent, where it's 6 domains that leaders need to play in: purpose, people, culture, execution, systems, and strategy. And so under each one of those, it will give us 4 questions to evaluate what that problem is and how they might explore it.
Interesting. Well, this has been fascinating, Gary. I really appreciate it. For those in our audience that are like, okay, I want the assessment, I want to see what's going on with Peak, or they just want to connect with you further, what's the best way for them to do that? And tell us again how to get the free assessment.
Yeah, so go to co2coaching.com, hit resource, and you'll be able to find that assessment and another assessment, which is around team leadership. Both would be free. One's automatic, the Peak one. The other one, you'd be contacted by our head of team coaching, John Sandoll. Additionally, if you want to get a hold of me, the easiest way is just go to the website and send a message and I'll get it.
Perfect. And we will have the links to that in the show notes. My last question for you is, what is a takeaway or memorable note you'd like to leave our audience with today?
You're probably asking 1/4 of the questions you could, and imagine how your life and world would change if you broaden that. And our model is not one that is like Myers-Briggs where you're stuck. This one is, as soon as you know it, you can start changing how you behave.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thanks for having me. What a treat.
It's so fun. And then I want to thank our audience for joining us on another episode of Creating Powerful Impact. I'm excited for you to take all these lessons and these resources you've learned here today, start implementing them so you can create even more impact in your world. Until next time, have an outstanding rest of your day. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to the Creating Powerful Impact podcast. If you are a successful coach, speaker, author, or thought leader who would like to be on this program, simply visit creatingpowerfulimpact.com/guest. If you are someone who got something out of this interview, would you please do me a favor and share this episode on social media? Just do a quick screenshot with your phone and text it to a friend or post it on your socials. Also, if you know somebody that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show and include the hashtag Creating Powerful Impact. I love seeing all of your posts and great guest selections. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episodes, go ahead and subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show, and they really mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more about us? Head on over to our website, graceandeaseproductions.com, or follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. Just look for Grace and Ease Productions on your favorite platform. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.